Welcome into another post-game edition, a victory post-game edition of Spits and Suds. I'm Gavin Spittle of 105.3 The Fan, as the Dallas Stars win in overtime by the score of 4-3. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Quick note, if you haven't had a chance, go back and listen to our old podcast. And our old podcast with Sean Shapiro the other day has a Q&A session with Stars general manager Jim Nill, and that's pretty cool. So he answers questions about Bork, Stankoven. He talks about salary cap. He talks about Duchesne's play. Just a lot of things that Jim Nill talks about. So if you haven't had a chance yet, that would be terrific. So in tonight's podcast, you always hear me saying, together we grow the great game of hockey here in DFW. And a couple of guys that are doing a good job as far as growing this great game are the podcast Starcastic Remarks, which is an awesome name. And let's just start there, boys. How did you come up with the name, and how did you guys get together? Because you guys are fans of the Stars that decided, hey, we're going to start a podcast, correct?
That's kind of how it happened. To be totally honest with you, I am a teacher. So when the pandemic came around, I was just bored out of my mind. I was I was so used to going around as a band teacher and just like constantly moving and stuff like that. So I needed something else to occupy my time because there wasn't much to do. So in August of 2020, we just kind of decided with we're just going to start this thing up and just see where it goes. And just between the three of us, we have so much passion for this team and how much we've loved this team. It all goes back to our dad. We call him the patriarch sometimes. And he kind of introduced us all to this wonderful game we call hockey and the wonderful team. And it just kind of gone off from there. And for the past 3.5, almost 4 years now, we've been kind of part of this community of trying to grow this fan base and trying to show these, Northeastern Canadian hockey nuts that these Southern people down here actually do know their hockey, regardless of what they think. And we've enjoyed every moment doing it. So it's been great to start it, and we've had so much fun.
So their names are Ryan, Chris, and James. And let's move to you, Chris. Let's talk about tonight's game. And it's one of those things where 2 points is 2 points, and you don't want to be overly negative, but there certainly were some flaws tonight on the ice, and we clearly saw some of those Stars mistakes result in Ducks goals.
Yeah, definitely felt like we clawed this one out as opposed to what it should have been. The first goal by Otter was really a rough one. The turnover by Hakanpää on that second goal, just some really big mistakes is what it felt like from the Stars tonight. On top of what was otherwise a really good game from the Stars with 44 shots on goal, really dominant in the offensive zone. But yeah, like you said, 2 points is 2 points. As you're getting away to the All-Star break, picking up as many of these as you can is great. And we've got 4 of the last 6 here, and to pick up this last one would put us real close into that conversation for the division lead.
So for Stars fans, I pointed this out. We're actually doing a doubleheader. I just appeared on the Starcastic Remarks podcast. These guys were nice enough to jump on Spits and Suds. And one of the things that we talked about that a lot of NHLers will say is that the first game back from an extended road trip, which this certainly was, feels like a road game. And you really, that first game is kind of dangerous, when they get back. I thought Ottinger made some key saves tonight, but at the same time, we certainly saw that first goal go in. That was just, kind of tough. I think, boys, that he's going to start to become more of a focus, as we've been seeing this Stars team give up more goals. James, you pointed out as far as quality starts, and I wanted you to get into that as far as, Jake Ottinger's play and the save percentage playing a big part of that.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen Otter be really good in the past. I mean, the main breakout season that everyone talks about is when they played Calgary in the playoffs, and that was basically all him the whole time. And since then, we haven't really seen the same Otter. And he hasn't been bad by any stretch of the imagination, and some of that may just be goaltending getting worse. That's offense getting better, but save percentage is down across the league this year. But it feels like it's a little worse for Otter. It feels sometimes he doesn't save on some of those bigger opportunities, whereas normally he would.
Yeah, certainly. And, I look at that one of the goals. Well, actually, when you look at the rest of the goals, tough turnover in the defensive zone by Yanni Hakanpää, Adam Henrique with the hustle play. Nice forecheck, steals the puck, gets it over to Terry, whether he knew Terry was there or not, throws it in front of the net. And I don't think many goalies, stop that. And then that goal, which Anaheim took the 1-goal lead. I mean, just a pass out in front. I don't know if that was a forward missed assignment. It looked like, but at the same time, this front of the net issue that I talk about on post games, it's almost rinse and repeat, boys, because I feel as though every single game there's a name the team: Ducks, Red Wings, Islanders, Detroit, a player that gets positioning from the offensive side in front of either Ottinger, name, or Wedgwood, or even Matt Murray, with a high grade chance because of the offensive positioning. We saw that several times tonight again.
And one of the things that we keep kind of going back to is just that there seems to be an MO with all these head coaches across the NHL on how to play the Dallas Stars. And you kind of mentioned it earlier in our episode that we just finished recording, but it's all about, all you have to do is just pressure the Stars defense, and they seem to burp the puck up. And whether that's unfair to the defense and they're just getting hammered down in their own zone, and the offense is the forwards are not coming back and helping out defensively, or maybe it's Otter is not paying attention enough, or Wedgwood, or whatever. But it just seems like, including in the net front, it seems like the Stars seem to get the first save from the goaltender, but then because of the rebounds, and especially that Wedgwood gives up sometimes, it just seems to be in the back of our net for the second or the third opportunity. And it does get extremely frustrating sometimes to see this, because we could be completely dominating a game, and one play by a defenseman, or just the one time they don't do their assignment, it goes in the back of our net, and we could be completely dominating a game and it wouldn't matter. And they don't measure that in games. It's all about goals. That is the single most important thing in the game of hockey. And sometimes we just allow easy goals as a team because just the defense is not good enough and getting the puck out of our own zone or whatever.
So we saw the return of Miro Heiskanen tonight, boys, and time on ice leader with 25 minutes, scored a goal. But kind of the story was the pairing of Miro Heiskanen and Thomas Harley. And Thomas Harley exits with a +3 goal and an assist, 2 points, and just a solid game. And, the future is bright, and really excited about the play of Thomas Harley tonight.
Yeah, it would be awesome if we could clone both of those guys, because we talk about the trouble that we have getting the puck out of our own zone. Neither of them have an issue with it. They can get out of there pretty easily and do some damage on the other end of the ice like we saw tonight. I love seeing them play together. Unfortunately, they look even better because of how much worse our other pairs are too whenever you have them together. But yeah, I think seeing them together is that's a elite top pair. It's not even just, okay, now we actually have a top pair as opposed to just Miro playing with whoever and just trying to keep him on the ice as often as possible. The Miro Harley thing, that is a pair, and that is one of the better pairs in the league, I think, right now, especially with the way Harley has stepped up recently and his play has gotten so much better.
Yeah, I love the youth movement, and hopefully Bixel can come along pretty soon and, add another young body to that defensive core, another young body that kind of struggled tonight. And it was kind of ironic that Miro comes back in and all of a sudden it's back to old Nils Lundqvist after such a great stretch. And just at times, whether he was falling down on the ice or, caused that turnover, which Ottinger had to come out deep late in the game and, kind of use his body to protect the puck, which probably saved a goal, things like that. So, and in the first period, you can't really blame it, but, it just seemed like the puck, he was fighting the puck throughout the night, whether or not it was on his stick or going off his leg, and almost turned into a goal.
Yeah, and on our podcast, I'm a huge Lundqvist apologist, and I am just begging for him to get more and more ice time. And it's the games like this that it feels like you can't give him more ice time. I mean, he's doing the exact same mistakes that we've seen him get pulled off the ice for, shooting it straight into the shin pads, leading almost to a breakaway that Otter had to come way out of his crease to break up. The falling on the ice at very inopportune times. He's making it hard to put him on the ice for Pete DeBoer, and it seems like he wants to, especially with the way we saw Hanley kind of finish up that kind of 10-game stretch without Miro there. So he's got an opportunity here, and it just feels like it feels like he's squandering it. It's I wish he would play better so we can see more of him.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
It really feels like it shows that it's more mental right now, because throughout the 10 games that Miro's out, he was playing and he looked at least like serviceable. I mean, you had games here and there. It was like he had a rough game here, but he wasn't falling on the ice every period. And it feels like that he kind of got back to that tonight.
It's just one of those things that 12 giveaways tonight for the Dallas Stars, and you want to cut that down. The other thing I wanted to point out, 44 shots on net is important, but I felt as though they left some quality shots, on the table, in that I felt as though they were looking for that perfect pass, and it's sometimes I just like to see them get back to the basics and just shoot on net, especially when you're playing a goaltender that was clearly hot tonight in John Gibson. Probably kept Anaheim in the game and almost won Anaheim the game. John Gibson against the Stars is just a nemesis, always played well, playing real well for Anaheim. We talked about this earlier, beating a Boston, beating a Colorado. Anaheim has done that tonight. And like that first goal, it's really interesting because I was watching the game with someone tonight, and when Marchment passed it, I was like, oh man, you got a clear look. And all of a sudden Duchesne with, perfect pass to Duchesne. And I'm like, oh, never mind, but that is a great moment. But at the same time, I just felt as though sometimes they're just looking for that perfect pass, getting a little too cute. And I think that's causing a few turnovers as well.
Yeah. I feel like a lot with Stars fans, they're always talking about, man, how are these backup goalies always like the best goalies we've ever seen?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it is due to it's not just that we're giving up the good shots. It is that it's not getting people in front of the net when a goalie is on. So you see a goalie's on, you gotta make an adjustment at some point. And it seems like the Stars' only adjustment that they make is that, okay, let's make the perfect pass. It's a slam dunk, no chance for the goalie. When we need to kind of get back to what we did a lot last year, especially on the power play, and that's get guys in front, get deflections, and find some greasy goals right around the crease. And it feels like we've gotten away from that. That was so successful for us last year. I think that would help us, especially when we're playing goalies that are playing out of their mind the way Gibson was tonight.
And one of the things.
Oh, sorry, go, Brian.
Sorry, Gavin. Sorry. And that's funny that you said that, Gavin. It's because it's almost like you were reading my mind. What I like to do is during the games, is just during big chances or big moments or something that just pops in my head or whatever, I'll just type it down on my phone and I basically take notes for every single game. And one of the things that I actually typed down, and I put it even in a question mark, the Stars trying to be too cute with it. And for those that are hardcore hockey fans, you kind of hear this disease called overpassitis. And sometimes the Stars kind of, and especially with the elite depth offense that the Stars have, they can sometimes get away with, get into that. And we see it from Duchesne. We see it from Hintz sometimes. We've seen it from Robo. And Robo's been better about shooting the puck lately. But there have been times where I feel like I'm yelling at the TV, like, shoot! And there's another pass, and then it gives the defense another opportunity to stop the pressure that the Stars may be having, whether it's a power play or a rush chance or extended 5-on-5 ozone time or whatever it is. So I think that you're onto something there, Gavin, and that maybe they just need to be less cute. Just be less cute and just look for the quality chance. And when you see it, You know it. It's just something that with the more hockey you watch and the more you get used to watching this team, you see exactly where that chance is, and you're like, okay, they got to shoot at the puck right now, right here.
You know, one of the things that I love about like having Luds on this podcast is like, you know, Craig's won 2 cups, and I like to ask questions that I'm thinking, but I'm kind of embarrassed to ask. And one of the things I asked is like, why do the Stars keep missing the net at times? Like, did you ever notice that? It's like all of a sudden, and he just put it simply, you know, because he coaches some real good, you know, Stars youth as far as, you know, even before juniors. And he said that he watches his team, and one thing that he preaches to these kids, they're all looking to go top shelf. They're all looking to pick the corners. And he said that's not necessarily the most effective, boys. And, you know, sometimes like similar to that extra pass, sometimes you're just trying to get it in that small window and your chances go down, whether just put pucks on net and, you know, make the goalie make the stop. Because we've seen time and time again, like that opportunity, you know, just a simple cross ice pass that went off of Ottinger for the first Anaheim goal. So I did want to ask you guys, I find it fascinating that we can't figure out if an NFL football crosses the goal line, yet we in tennis with 160 mile per hour can get it within centimeters showing where it hit the line. And in today's NHL, it is absolutely amazing that we can tell where a puck is in John Gibson's glove. That to me was absolutely fascinating. I was genuinely surprised they overturned it. I mean, but I guess you can see that crossing the goal line. Had it not been, I was telling my buddy, I thought that was one of the better saves I've seen all year, to position your glove in that small window, finding that window where your player can't block the puck. I just found it was an amazing save that'll never be shown again because it actually wasn't a save. And I just wanted to get your take on it because I was absolutely amazed that it was overturned. But I mean, when you look at the replay and you magnify it, the NHL, man, they're on top of it when it comes to replay.
Yeah, I think that was finally we got on the good side of one of those reviews. It feels like it's been a minute for the Stars, but yeah, to see that one go in our favor was great, especially because it was such a big moment in that game too. It was like he makes that save and we're just fully shut down. How do we not score on that? 3 amazing chances in a row right in front, and he stones us with the biggest save of the night. And to be like, oh, actually it did go in. That was just that super helped the emotion of the game, in my opinion.
Well, it was a goal because it wasn't Mason Marchment who took the shot, right?
There you go.
But honestly, Gavin, when I saw the save, I flashed back. I'm going to show my age a little bit here. My mind flashed back to the Nabokov save on Brad Richards in the playoffs. Oh my goodness! I still that save is in my nightmares for years and still is to this day. It's like, what was that, 2008? Man, it was a long time ago.
That's a great pull by you. It was back then, and Marty Turco said, hold my beer because I'll make a save like that as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and he robbed San Jose. That was, to me, the best goaltending matchup in a playoff that I had seen regarding the Start. That, to me, both goalies. And, you know, I talked to Marty about that, and, you know, either goalie did not want the other goalie to win, and they knew how well they were playing. And yeah, Nabokov does not get mentioned in circles as far as like one of the greats, but I mean, man, you know, he certainly was elite when he was playing for that San Jose team. So that's a great pull for you. I just thought the save was wonderful tonight. You know, I'm kind of a goaltending nerd, you know, because I think they're forgotten with the high scoring chances that are now the NHL and the kind of lack of physicality, you know, that we have. But I mean, the coordination as far as these glove saves and the pad saves, and, you know, Jake Ottinger coming across the crease like he did in Detroit with a toe save, you know, I mean, it's just, it really is impressive. Boys, tonight in a Central Division, Nashville beat Minnesota. More importantly, old school boys, old school with 46 penalty minutes and 2 fights, a couple instigator penalties.
I was unaware of this.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah,
I'm interested.
Minnesota is actually an interesting watch this year because they're not necessarily good in the Central, but Minnesota Winnipeg is boy, they'll get rough there. Minnesota Nashville. So, Minnesota is one of those teams. If you like the antiquated physicality play like Gavin Spittle does, the old school kind of way once in a while, that's a good one. So that was kind of interesting. Unfortunately, Nashville pulls it out, so they get the 2 points. The other thing I wanted to point out, that Patrick Waugh's return to Montreal was spoiled tonight as the Islanders fall. They were down 3-0, came all the way back, tied it up at 3. Montreal scores late, 4-3, the final score.
Yeah, the crazier thing in that game is the 8 power plays that the Islanders got.
Yeah,
they
that's
had
a great point, James.
All power play goals to come back in that. I still can't believe that you give one up late after all that.
Yeah,
NHL's rigged, guaranteed.
Absolutely. Boys, we have Edmonton coming up in just a few weeks, and just the tear continues. And a lot of people now all of a sudden are saying, like, who's going to beat Edmonton? But at the same time, I wanted to get your thoughts. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. As I said on the podcast the other day, the coach bump is real. And then I asked Craig about it, and he said, "Oh yeah, it's real." The laces get tightened a little bit. You're trying to say, "Hey, I'm a good player. Check me out." So it's just fascinating because we've seen coach bumps, although it temporarily in Minnesota with John Hines taking the helm. We're seeing it in Edmonton. So it's interesting that these triggers are being pulled in the NHL, and I think in part it's because owners and general managers are saying, hey, we want that extra playoff revenue. If we have a shot, like the Islanders, who are just outside the playoffs, that extra playoff revenue, that gate means something to us.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see the coach polls. Even like there's situations where it's like there's no way this is the coach's fault, but you still do it because now it's because of the history. You've seen it work. But it's also just the easiest thing for you to do. You got to find something to change. Something's got to move to get your team up to that next step. And the easiest thing, you don't change salary cap. You don't bring anyone up. You don't send anyone down. It's just changing a coach. So your team stays the same. What you've built is the same, and change the coach is the easy thing to do. And it's been successful crazily, especially the past 5 years. It has been super successful.
And I just don't think and I'll go out on a limb here. I'll say a hot take here. I don't think the Edmonton Oilers are a cup contender.
Really?
I don't. It's the reason for it is just how hot and cold they can truly be. I mean, literally, they go on this terrible tear. They're 31st in the NHL at one point. They get the coaching change. They go and win, I think, 9 in a row. They go and lose 4 in a row, and now they're winning 14 in a row. So the thing is, there may be some recent consistency for their game, but this team is only going to go as far as Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. That's it. And regardless of some of these other guys that are kind of stepping up, I should mention Zach Hyman as well, who is having a fantastic season with them. And same thing with Warren Fogle. He's kind of being a really good cheap option up in the top 6 for them and kind of getting some offense going for them. But I just don't. I honestly just don't see it because as good as they can be just as bad. And you don't see that from the Stanley Cup contenders that we would consider right now. Like this year, Vancouver is absolutely a Stanley Cup contender. We thought they were going to fall off. They have not fallen off. The Vegas Golden Knights, they've kind of had a little bit of a rough streak as of late, but they're still able to kind of push their way through and get through the rough patches. Carolina is starting to play a little bit better. LA is probably going to get out of this funk here soon as well. It's just a different feeling for me with Edmonton compared to these other teams.
If anyone can drag Edmonton to the Stanley Cup, though, it's Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. That is a crazy pairing.
But
yeah, I think defensively,
he can't do it by himself. He's got to have guys surrounding him.
He hasn't done it yet, but he could.
Yeah, I am impressed that defensively they're a lot better. I shut out the Blackhawks tonight. By the way, former star Jason Dickinson getting a new 2-year deal. So stick tap to him on that. The other thing, boys, that I wanted to point out to our Spits and Suds listeners is the fact that, because we're talking about catching Colorado or Winnipeg, but the Stars have actually stretched their lead as far as wild card. Right now, as far as making the playoffs, it's an 11-point gap. And that is stretched out. So, kudos. We're talking about, we got to get first or whatever. But I'm kind of looking at that too in the back end. And I'm saying 11 points, that's stretching out really nicely for this Dallas team where, they can concentrate and the stick won't be as tight because, as that gap widens, the playoffs become more in sight.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that's exactly where you want to be going into the All-Star break as kind of a benchmark. You're solidly in the playoffs. You got your eye on the division lead, and we got more than an eye on it now. We are right there in the thick of it. 65 for Winnipeg, 65 Colorado, 64 Dallas. We're right there. And even for league, we are 5 points back from the President's Trophy right now, which is a crazy thing to think about. Given the past 2 years and how crazy high the previous President's Trophy winners have been, but it's within reach. The Stars are one of the better teams this year, thanks to the spread and league parity.
Yeah, and the league standings was one I was going to point out too. It dropping from first in your division to third feels really bad when you look at it and you're like, we were in first for like the first month and a half of the season. But you look at the league standings and you're like, we're sitting fifth and our division is third, fourth, fifth in the league.
Yeah. One thing I will say, which will be interesting on Saturday, matinee tilts are a little different. You don't get that morning skate in, sometimes it takes a while for those legs to get going. One little thing that I want to point out just in case is that, you look at the Stars schedule and they played Philadelphia on a Thursday, then they had Saturday, Sunday back to back, then Tuesday in Detroit, now Thursday. So a lot of games, and then they're back at it on Saturday. Washington, who's coming in here, shut out Anaheim on Tuesday. They have not played since. So they're going to be fresh on Saturday. So just something to keep in mind, as the Stars have played numerous games and, let's hope they can end it with 2 points, going into the All-Star break.
Yeah, we've talked about that being a trap too, because you probably got your plane leaving that night to head off to whatever island destination you got for that week. So really trying to lock in on that matinee and make sure you get 2 points out of it against an inferior opponent. That's going to be huge as to your emotion heading into the All-Star break, I feel like.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like the perspectives changed when you see coaches now sitting down the player and just say you're going to the All-Star, and they're like, "Oh, I guess I have to change my plans."
Yep. Yeah,
it's not the same.
Yeah, someone posted on Twitter. I can't remember who it was. Someone posted on Twitter that they've never been happier to cancel their Airbnb before. Someone who got to the All-Star game. It was his first time though, so I'm sure guys like Ovechkin are just tired of it at this point.
Yeah, Sean Shapiro and I talked about they need to change the format. Again, unfortunately, like it's cool and it's exciting, but I'm glad Jake Ottinger's getting the notoriety. I wish it was last year, but when you're in the same division as Connor Hellebuck and UC Saros, it's awful tough. Though Saros is down this year too. But one thing I'll say is that I would like to see expanded benches if they can in some way, because I just feel as though it's like pick the best guys. Don't necessarily pick based on position. It's tough. I know what they're trying to do, and it becomes a skills competition, 3-on-3 and everything. It's not like checking is going to be a big part of the game or anything like that. It's just All-Star games during the season and All-Star games in any sport. It's just not the same, it's just at one time it was like a celebration, especially pre like NHL center ice packages or ESPN plus packages where like, you'd see like if the Boston Bruins came to play Dallas, that could be your first time seeing the Boston Bruins besides reading them in the paper, so these teams were special. Or when you saw the American League versus the National League on TV, it was different. It was unique because you didn't have interleague back when I was a kid. So to see the Philadelphia Phillies, take the field was like, wow, this is so cool. This is different. And they're playing and you had pride that your guys were in it. And now it's like, okay, good. Hopefully Jake Ottinger can get his game together and not get hurt during the All-Star game. So it's a little bit different.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that being the reason why they feel worse now, but that makes a lot of sense to me.
Well, and you know, I think they've also kind of changed their target audience for the All-Star game, if that kind of makes any sense. I mean, in all reality, let's be honest, it's not for the adults. It's kind of geared more towards the kids, it feels like nowadays. Like like preteen and the young kids. It seems like that's what they're trying to do. And I'm sorry, I don't like the jerseys.
Yeah, those
But
jerseys sure do look childish.
yeah, but that's what I was thinking. But like I showed some of my some of my students where I work and like what they thought of the jerseys, and they actually thought they were cool. And I was like, really? I was like, I wasn't a big fan of it. But what is nice about the All-Star game though, if you look forward to next year, and there's already talks about it, is a sort of kind of best on best tournament, and it seems like it's going to be US, Canada, Finland, Sweden, and it's just going to be NHL players. It'll be a mid-season tournament, so I think that's going to probably take the place of the All-Star game, is the rumors. We haven't had that confirmed yet or anything like that, but I am looking forward to that. And maybe you can throw in the All-Star game like in every other year kind of thing. So maybe in a year you actually take the week off and everybody takes the week off. There's just nothing. And everyone is allowed to breathe for a little bit. And then the next year they do a best on best tournament. And then the year after that, they bring back the All-Star game or whatever. Maybe do some sort of rotation kind of thing, because I think people have kind of grown out of the All-Star game, to be honest with you.
Yeah, one other note, we mentioned the Canadians and Islanders. Canadians veteran Brendan Gallagher with a real tough elbow tonight.
Oh, yeah.
Expect NHL player safety to call a hearing, and we'll see what the suspension, if there is going to be a suspension. Not really a guy that's known for that. However, the NHL certainly wants to, take care of that, especially if it's in open ice. So that's one thing. I think player safety, I'm sure a hearing will be called, and we'll probably get the ruling on that tomorrow. So wherever your favorite podcasts are found, we say that about Spits and Suds, and that's where you can find Starcastic Remarks, right, boys?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's awesome what you guys have done. Kudos. Congratulations, Ryan, James, Chris. I hope it grows because, like I said, it's all about expanding great Stars talk here in DFW. You guys are a big part of it. Truly appreciate the collaboration, allowing me onto your podcast tonight, and you guys jumping on Spits and Suds. It was a double post-game edition. So stick tap to you boys, and certainly keep up the good work.
Yeah, thanks for having us on, and just like you are for us, we're big fans of this one too. So you keep doing what you're doing as well.
Man, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. James, Ryan, and Chris from Starcastic Remarks, a wonderful name. I thought Spits and Suds was a good name until Starcastic Remarks came around. So, folks, we'll probably be on Saturday after the game, obviously. We'll talk about that Stars game. We got some really cool interviews. I'm going to take on Rich Peverly on Monday. So we're going to tape that and talk about Rich's career and hoisting the Stanley Cup. And, we talk about Matt Murray in the minors, and that's a guy that is undrafted, and can he find his place onto a Stars roster as a backup goaltender? Well, Rich Peverly was an undrafted guy. Now he's the head of player development for the Stars, so we'll talk Stankoven, we'll talk Bork. So if you have any questions for Rich Peverly and the Stars organization, please, at GJ Spittle, we'll get him in for you. So really excited to do a deep dive on Rich Peverly's career, as he was also traded from the Bruins to the Stars, and some other guy was traded in that trade named Tyler Seguin. Welcome into another edition of Spits and Suds. I'm Gavin Spittle from 105.3 The Fan. Wanted to give you a Caps preview as the Stars, after the Caps head into the All-Star break, but a nice afternoon tilt on Saturday. So wanted to talk and let you in on the Capitals, because we don't really see them that often. And obviously we think of Ovechkin, but there's so much more to this team. And joining us from afternoons on The Fan in Washington, D.C., part of the Grant and Danny Show, also part of Capitals TV, is Grant Paulsen. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
Man, I'm doing all right. I just look at the Capitals and I see the names when I go down the stat sheet. But then I look and they've lost 3 straight to Central Division opponents. Where are we at as far as, how the fans and how you look at this Capitals team?
Hey, Gavin, it's tough. I mean, they are really in a weird spot because, frankly, in almost any normal, traditional roster building situation, post Stanley Cup now in the rear view, coming up on 6 summers ago in 2018, it would be time to reboot and rebuild and move some of your veteran assets, whether that's defenseman John Carlson, who logs a lot of minutes and has a big 8-year, $8 million contract, or TJ Oshie, or some of the other veterans who have been around for a long time for this team. But we're in a situation right now where Alex Ovechkin is trying to score enough goals to catch Wayne Gretzky, and he is now under 70 goals away from an all-time record in goals. The Capitals have promised him, as he re-signed here, that they would not rebuild, that they would allow him not only to chase Wayne Gretzky down, because that's not only big for Ovechkin, but for them as well. It'd be incredible for the organization. They told him that they're going to give him a chance to keep winning as long as he's here, that they're not going to bottom out. And that, while it's something that fans don't always love, I think, as a reality here, it's also not that uncommon that you've got this all-time great, maybe the best goal scorer ever, a Hall of Famer, one of the greatest players to live. This isn't the first team to make a promise to that guy that, hey, we're not going to bottom out and start building this thing from the foundation up until after you're gone. So this is the tough part is, yeah, they should probably move a couple pieces, but they've got to sell that to him. I was told last year when they moved Dmitry Orlov on defense and Garnet Hathaway and a couple of the players they sold off to add assets, it was a really good trade deadline in the grand scheme of things. Ovechkin wasn't thrilled. It didn't really go with his timeline, his plan. So that's the situation we're in right now. What's difficult is he's, for the moment, not scoring goals, and they're now not winning games.
Yeah, absolutely. It's what we kind of saw here with Dirk Nowitzki, where knew the end was near, knew a record was within sights, knew he wasn't the same player, but at the same time, you want the history to be played out in your hometown.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
a great comp.
Yeah,
and look, I would say this, if just to quantify it for your listeners, Gavin. I mean, I would say if I was doing a pie chart, 75% of Capitals fans-ish, maybe even a little more, their number one priority is Ovechkin's entire career is here. He breaks Gretzky's record wearing the red from the Rock the Red era, and the rest can kind of sort itself out. They have a Stanley Cup, and they can kind of live on that. But it doesn't change that when they're down 3-0, the jokes on Twitter are loud, and the anger and the fervor on social media is loud. And when we take calls, that people are upset. So it's not unlike, here with the Wizards, people for years have said, you're mediocre, you're not going anywhere, you're paying Bradley Beal, this is a terrible plan, bottom out, be terrible, tank. And now they're doing that, and they're 7-900 this season, numbers approximate, and people are irate how terrible they are, right? Like, you got what you asked for a little bit. So I think it's hard because people want Ovechkin to break the record, and they want him to finish here. And that means perhaps that you're probably not starting this build. So you're elongating this period now where, since they won the Cup in 18, since then, 19 on, for 3 straight years, they made the playoffs and didn't get out of the first round. And they could be on the precipice of not making the playoffs this season, which would now be stringing together multiple years of not having spring hockey, which has not happened here since before this era began, way back when Ovechkin and this team started to make playoff appearances regularly about 15 years ago.
Yeah. What's interesting, too, is I look at the wild card standings. I mean, I know, do fans, do they still think wild card is within reach? Just 5 points as of today.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, before this recent stretch where, not only are they losing, but they're getting walloped pretty good. They were in a really good spot. If you look at the games in hand as well, they've still got a couple games in hand over a couple of the teams they're chasing. The problem is they have the hardest remaining schedule in the conference. And last I checked, it's been about a week and a half, perhaps the hardest remaining schedule in all the National Hockey League in terms of the opponents ahead. So the part of the season where you had to harvest your nuts and kind of file some, squirrel some things away here, they weren't able to do that necessarily. There's also the trade deadline coming up, and they do have some pieces, if they wanted to move them, that they could do that. They could pull that off and get assets back. Again, you probably need Ovechkin to be willing and sign off on some of those things, though, or at least engaged in those conversations. They could absolutely make the playoffs. I guess the larger question is, to what end? Do you have the goaltending to make a run? When Charlie Lindgren's played this season, He's actually been outstanding.
Yeah, he's
for
been
the
really
most
good.
part.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's been dynamite for them. He just hasn't been able to stay healthy. Darcy Kemper, who they paid a lot of money to and brought in after he won a cup with the Colorado Avalanche, has kind of been a disaster for much of this season. And that contract isn't working out. He's become their number 2 goalie. But I don't know that anybody really views them as a team that can make a run. My philosophy is different, I will say, which is to say that in hockey, I just think you got to get into the playoffs
Yep.
and see what's what. Some puck luck, some bounces, and see where it goes. The team, the Caps, won the cup. That was not their best team. It was the year they had the most good fortune. So I'm a believer in like build a playoff team and that's the job. But a lot of people feel like they look at this team and they go, this is not a cup caliber team. You know, what is the point of this, I guess?
Yeah. And, I see so many of these names, and then I look at the power play percentage at just 14%, and I'm like,
Brutal.
wow, that's brutal for the names on that roster, especially, Ovechkin. I mean, that was just, and, still is at times, I guess, but, that's just such a cannon. I mean, you'd go to the games when the Caps are on the power play, even though you were like, for instance, we'd be rooting for the Stars. I mean, I'd be on the edge of my seat waiting for that puck to come over to Ovechkin for that cannon.
Yeah, so they went, believe this or not, Gavin, they went a calendar month without a power play goal this season.
That's amazing. Wow.
It was, I'm top of my head, I want to say it was like 43 consecutive power plays that they didn't score on at one point, which is unfathomable. This has been, up until the last couple of years, over a decade span, this kind of elite level, to your point, just indefensible, incredible, top of the league power play. And it has trended south over now multiple coaching staffs and a handful, a few seasons. One of the reasons they went and got Spencer Carberry, remember, who's their new head coach, who I think's done a really good job. I think he's getting a little more out of this group than there is. They just don't have any offense and goal scoring, which we can get into, but they're playing a pretty sound, buckled down defensive system more nights than not. They're not giving up a lot of high danger shots when things are going well. And I think, he is showing this was a tremendous championship level minor league coach who last season was coaching a power play on one of the better teams and better power plays in the conference. I think he was a really good hire. He's the youngest coach in the league. This is a long-term play for them, but he was brought in to some extent to fix the power play. And it just, between him and Ovechkin, it just has not happened despite the pieces that they have. Oshie in the slot. You can put Wilson in front of the cage with his big body. Kuznetsov, who can play a little quarterback. I think this is the one area where losing Nicholas Backstrom, who is a Hall of Fame caliber center and one of the great players of his era,
Amazing.
as an assist man and the Robin to Ovi's Batman. Like, he always kind of quarterbacked their power play and made the right pass and possessed the puck and would work, in whatever area he needed to set everybody up and made the right decisions. And as he hit a hip injury and his career has been derailed, but as he deteriorated over the last year and change, I think their power play did too.
It's good to hear what you said about Spencer Carberry, that you like what he's done in his first year, getting what he can out of that team, because, I'm like you. I looked at him as an up-and-coming coach. I loved his youth, his relatability, the fact that he came through the system, his success at Hershey. And, I say that because I also look around the league and teams that are on that fringe wild card, a few of them have tried the bench bump. And the bench bump, for the most part, has been successful. We're now seeing it in Patrick Waugh. Unfortunately, the Stars, when they faced them, it was Waugh's first game behind the bench. And I told our Spits and Suds listener, beware of the bench bump. So I'm glad the bench bump's not happening so they can watch him grow as a coach.
Yeah, I think they'll be patient with him. I think they're realistic, whether they say it publicly or not, about where they're at, which is to say he was not handed a, Stanley Cup caliber team. I mean, this was, Laviolette the last couple of years, Peter Laviolette. I thought he did fine, but it was just kind of an uninspiring, authoritative veteran head coach, and they needed to go, in my opinion, younger and higher energy. I think he's done some really sharp things. He's gotten a lot out of Anthony Mantha, who has become much more productive this season for them, which was one of the biggest priorities on their to-do list. He's fourth on the team in points. He's got 14 goals on the season, which is second to only Dylan Strome. He was basically a healthy scratch. They were parking night in and night out because he and Laviolette just didn't see eye to eye, and he's one of the higher paid guys on the team. Just as an example, Connor McMichael some of the younger players. None of these guys are super high ceiling stars, but Alexi Protas, who they just gave an extension to, who's been on the second line at left wing. Connor McMichael, I mentioned, is a center who's played some wing for them, was a former top round pick. Beck Malenstein was on the fourth line working hard for them. These types of players who have worked, some of them, in the past with Carberry, and I think are responding to his coaching, have all elevated their games this year. So there's been a lot of good. The bottom line is they just can't score. They can't really generate chances. I guess there's some concern or worry or question as to whether or not that's a system thing. Does this have anything to do with his scheme? I just don't know, for people that think that, like, where's the offense supposed to come from, right? I mean, Strome, as I said, leads the team with the 18 goals, and Manta's got 14. Wilson has 12. Other than Ovechkin, who's not scoring, Oshie's been hurt a bunch. He's got 8 goals. But, like, who else is supposed to score?
Yeah.
The idea of Kuznetsov is better than the player at this point. I think they'd love to move him if they could, and it's just not happening. McMichael's ascending, but has 7 goals, and he's a center at this point who's more going to get apples than score. Their fourth liner, Dowd's got 7 goals, including some shorties. But like they just don't have scorers. They don't really have top 6 skill that's necessary. And maybe they get that, whether it's at the deadline now with the $9 million that's freed up with Backstrom, if they put him on long-term IR, or maybe this offseason. But for the moment, I just think they got to win 2-1 and 3-2 way too often.
One of the things that does concern me about this upcoming game, Grant, is the Stars have struggled with some teams that exert their physicality, and I know the Caps can do that.
Yeah, they can play big. One of the knocks on them has been, frankly, over the last couple years in town with folks, is that they're not fast enough. They don't skate enough, but they can be heavy and lean on people. There are guys on this team where it's more size than physicality. Like Anthony Manta looks like a guy you don't want to have to dig a puck out of a corner because he's coming. He's not necessarily going to hit you, though. Same with like Protas, who's a monster. But look, you got Tom Wilson. TJ Oshie's not a big guy, plays a very physical brand of hockey. The fourth line has done a really good job forechecking and doing some of those things. Ovechkin less this year than in the past, frankly, but is one of the most physical players in the National Hockey League and has been for years. So yeah, they could be a pain in the butt to play.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get it twisted as I'm kind of down on how things are trending right now. This is not a fun team to play when they're engaged for 60 minutes. It's just that, a couple of their best players, including Evgeny Kuznetsov, aren't engaged nearly enough. And I just think they lack some firepower.
So if Grant Paulsen's coaching the Stars, how would he attack the Capitals?
I think first and foremost, the teams that give them problem get the puck out of their own end. They get in transition. They're able to get access through the neutral zone with speed, and it gives the Capitals fits. So that would be the first thing I would say. I think at even strength, this team, Washington, has been pretty good. Their penalty kill has gone through stretches where it wasn't, but has been dynamite at times. I think, to me, if you play a game where you can get the puck off the stick from a defenseman, activate, maybe get up the ice with any kind of speed through the neutral zone, I'm worried when Washington's playing teams like that night in and night out. And the second thing I would say is you just got to throw the puck on the net. I mean, they do a poor job, in my opinion, at getting bodies out from the crease. I think way too often their goalies can't see shots that are coming. If Kemper's in the net, not to beat up on him because he's had some good games, but he has struggled with rebound control here recently. So it's a puck on net game for me, and it's a speed game that really would bother them.
Yeah, and that's interesting because the Stars focus on speed with Johnston, Robertson, Hintz, and then Matt Duchene, Grant, has been absolutely amazing here. It's just, it came out of the blue. We knew he'd be good, but it just seems like he's thrived in Pete DeBoer's system.
I'll tell you what's interesting is sometimes, Washington benefited from this for a long time, but, culturally there are just these teams that are elevators, right? Where the Caps would go find like Brett Connolly.
Great
and
point,
all of a sudden
yeah.
he's a 20-goal guy, or Oshie comes from the Blues and becomes a star and he's going to all-star games. And a lot of it is who you're playing with or the system, but yeah, to see, he's a plus 13 and he's creeping up on now 45, 50 points.
Yeah.
Top 5 on the team.
Yeah. At just $3 million a
Makes sense that
year.
he's playing well, but that well, also big goals. I mean, leading the team in
Yeah.
game-winning goals.
Yeah.
This season. So I just think though it almost feels louder when some of the goals you're scoring are so big.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why, Stars fans are kind of keeping their fingers crossed, like, hey, Nashville's still paying you. We still take $3 million again, but
Yeah. Good luck with that.
Yeah, I got to feel, I looked him up last night. Matt Duchene has signed $105 million in contracts. What a career. Jeez.
Wow. That's
you
more than I thought.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
I know it is absolutely crazy. Well, taking the hockey hat off, as the brand manager of 105.3 The Fan, love you guys in DC. You guys are beasts in afternoon. Congratulations on all your success. I know you have a show to do. Really appreciate this preview. And I love giving our listeners, as we grow this podcast, kind of a look at the next team so they can listen and then they can watch the game and they say, ooh, I heard Grant talk about that. So thank you so much for carving a couple of minutes for me, my friend.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you so much. Be well, and good luck to your boys the rest of the season.
Thanks so much. That's Grant Paulsen, 106.7 The Fan, part of the Grant and Danny Afternoon Show, also part of Caps TV. Thank you so much for listening to this preview of Caps Stars on Spits and Suds.